All right, let's pick up with where we left off. We're looking at federal wage hour law. Employers covered by the Fair Labor Standards Act of 1938, also known as FLSA, are required by federal law. This piece of legislation was passed by Congress. This requires employers that are covered by FLSA to pay the minimum hourly wage, and also to pay any overtime pay to employees covered by FLSA. And the law defines those hours of work for which an employee must be paid. Now we have what is called the enterprise test, and that determines which businesses are covered by or are exempt from the FLSA. And virtually all employers are covered. One notable exception is the small mom and pop shops. Very small. They're usually like a husband and wife. They're not subject to the enterprise test if they're small and they hire only the owner's children. Then those employers are exempt from FLSA. The employers covered by the FLSA, well, businesses started after or on March 31st, 1990 that have gross annual sales of at least $500,000, $500,000. Dry cleaners and construction companies that started before April 1st, 1990. Retailers started before April 1st, 1990 that have annual gross sales of at least $362,500. And whenever it's saying gross sales, that's the sales that ring up on the cash register. That is not the net profits, the net income. Non-retail businesses started before April 1, 1990 that have gross annual sales of at least $250,000. Schools, hospitals, and nursing homes are covered by FLSA, as well as businesses engaged in interstate commerce, which means they're crossing state lines between Arkansas and Missouri, or Missouri and Kansas. Now, the federal minimum wage changes periodically, and for our text purposes, it's stating that as of July 24th, 2009, the minimum wage is $7.25 an hour. I know the rate $7.50 is what the new rate is, but $7.25 is what we have for the text and for the test. Tipped employees have a lower federal minimum wage, but their total earnings must average at least the minimum wage. So the formula for tipped employees is that the employer is required to pay $2.13 per hour for each tipped employee. Then we need to take that amount, add the tips and the employee has received from clients, customers, add the two together, divide by the total number of hours worked to see if that averages out to be the minimum wage, $7.25 or more. Because if it's not, the employer is required to make up the difference. Now, also when we look at federal law, an employee may not be docked an amount reducing the employee's wages for the work week below the federal minimum wage. We have an example of a tipped employee. We have Darla. She's a waitress. She earns $2.13 an hour plus tips. In March 2013, Darla works 35 hours 1 week and earns $280. So what we do here is take the $2.13 required to be paid by the employer, we multiply it times 35 hours worked, and the employer has $74.55 showing to pay in wages. Now, the tips earned this week by Darla are showing us $205.45. When you add the wages of $74.55 and $205.45 of tips, that's $280 divided by 35. It averages out to $8 per hour for Darla for this week's work. And therefore, since the $8 is more than the minimum wage required by federal law, more than the $7.25, the employer does not have to pay any additional amount. The employer can simply pay her the $74.55. Now, Example, 1 week in May 2013, Darla works 40 hours and earns 240. So we've got the $2.13 times 40, or the $85.20. The tips are $154.80. That's $240. We divide it by, well, they're taking 40 times 7.25, and they're saying the minimum pay for the week needs to be $290. So they've worked it a little differently. Darla, by figuring the wages, the minimum required by the employer and what she earned in tips, is short the $290. So there's a $50 difference, and therefore the employer is going to have to pay her the $85.20 plus $50. So the employer now will have to pay $135.20, so that when you combine that with the tips, the minimum wage is met. It's satisfied. Now, federal minimum wage exemptions, in addition to tipped employees, there are others who are exempt from the minimum wage, and that would include outside salespersons. Employees who are under the age 20 are paid at least 4.25 hours. It applies only to the first 90 days of employment, provided that they do not displace or reduce the work hours of employees paid regular wages. Employees exempt by special certificate, and children employed by their parents in a mom and pop shop. So these are the exemptions as far as minimum wage. They could be paid less than the $7.25 an hour. Now, state laws, we have wage hour rules covered by state law include frequency of wage payment, when a terminating employee must be paid, method of payment such as by cash, check, debit card, EFT, electronic funds transfer, or some other method. There are rules for unclaimed wages called escheat law, requires employers to send those unclaimed wages to the state after a specified time period. And when federal and state laws conflict, generally the one that is the most favorable to the employee applies. Example, we have federal versus state law. Jose works in a state with no minimum wage. For the first week in February 2013, he works 40 hours. What is the minimum he must be paid for the week? Well, we need to go back and look at federal minimum wage of 7.25, take it times the 40, and the minimum he could be paid is $290 for the week. Here we have Dan, who works in a state which has a minimum wage of $8 an hour. For 1 week in January 2013, Dan works 40 hours. What is the minimum he must be paid for the week? Okay, federal law is 7.25, state law is $8. We have to select the one most favorable. So we're going with the $8. That's the greater. That's the state minimum. Take it times 40, so $320 in that specific state. All right, we've got Ming works in a state whose minimum wage is $5.15. For 1 week in March of 2013, Ming works 30 hours. What is the minimum she must be paid for the week? All right, here we've got 515. We've got to go back to federal law. Federal law says 7.25. So she's got to be paid 7.25 times 30. So that's $217.50. Now, what activities count as work? Federal law specifies the following as activities for which employees must be paid. Time spent putting on or taking off clothing required by the employer. This is one that has to be paid if it's required by the employer. Time required to be on call either near the workplace or on the premises. Travel time during the employee's normally scheduled work hours. Now, travel time. Travel time, employees must be paid for hours of travel from one work site to another during normal working hours. For example, Crowder has several sites. We have the Neosho, Webb City, Nevada, Cassville, McDonald County, to mention a few. So if an hourly paid employee it has to go from one work site to another between 8 to 5, they would be paid. They would be paid for that. That's required. Employees must also be paid for hours of travel to a work site that is a significant distance from the employee's normal work site. Employees need not be paid for time commuting to and from work unless the employee is on 24-hour call and takes a company vehicle home to be able to respond to emergency calls. Employees need not be paid for time commuting to and from work unless, after finishing a normal shift, is called back to work at a job site other than the employee's normal job site. Employees must be paid travel time for overnight trips, but only for those hours of travel that are during the employee's normal working hours. The day of the week is irrelevant. What matters is whether the hours of travel coincide with the employee's regularly scheduled hours. Example, Tyree normally works 9 to 5 Monday through Friday. If he travels on Monday from 6 to 8 p.m., he need not be paid for the travel time. But if he travels on any day, that's Monday through Friday plus Saturday or Sunday, from 1 to 3 p.m., then he is due 2 hours of pay. Here we've got Jan normally works 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. Monday through Friday. To attend a seminar, she leaves home for the airport Monday at 12 p.m. and arrives at her hotel in another city at 8 p.m. How many travel hours must Jan be paid for? All right. Her normal work hours are 8 to 5. Therefore, travel time on the Monday, the 12 to 5, is what she needs to be paid. So anything after 5 p.m., no, she does not. So she would have 5 hours. All right, we have Chen. Chen normally works 7 a.m. to 4 p.m., Monday through Friday. He leaves home on a business trip Sunday at 5 a.m., arriving at the hotel at 11 a.m. The following Saturday, he leaves the hotel at 1 p.m., arriving home at 6 p.m. How many travel hours must Chen be paid for Sunday and for Saturday? All right. He works 7 a.m. to 4 p.m. So therefore, on Saturday, let's do Sunday first. Sunday he works, 7 to 11 is what we can count. We can't count before 7 in the morning. So 7 to 11 is 4 hours. Saturday, traveling from 1 to 6, but we stop at 4. So it's 1 to 4. That's 3 hours. So we're looking at a total of 7 hours that Chen would be paid for travel. The rest, no.